Okay, so my name is Sukhinder Singh. I run a company in London called, many of you probably know, the Whisky Exchange. So my business in many ways is very similar to Maison de Whisky in France, that we do many different elements. So we run the Whisky Exchange, we run a range of independent bottlings under my sister company, Elixir Distillers. We run a team that supplies hotels, bars, restaurants with all mixed spirits. We run a very important event in London called the Whisky Show, similar to Whisky Live Paris. We run London Cocktail Week, which is this week in London, all over London. And we run an import distribution company, so we import and distribute brands like Nika, Japanese whiskey, Amrut, Michter's bourbon, etc. But we're here today to talk about Elixir Distillers and our range of whiskies. So just a quick background about myself. I have been in the whiskey industry probably just over 35 years. And I actually first met Thierry Benita of Maison de Whisky close to 30 years ago. And we've been very good friends ever since, you know, talking about similarities in business, learning from each other. It's a very lovely, interesting journey. So, as I said, I fell in love with whiskey 30 years ago. Initially, I used to work in my parents' business. And they were the first Indians in the UK to get a liquor license, which was in 1972, going on to nearly 50 years ago. And so as a child, I grew up in the business and I fell in love with spirits, a little bit of everything, a little bit of wine, a little bit of beer, all spirits. But then eventually my passion led me to whiskey, and in particular, single malt whiskey. I worked in my parents' shop for maybe 10 years after I finished university. And then my parents retired, and we started a new company called the Whisky Exchange. And that was in 1999, so this is our 20th anniversary of the Whisky Exchange. And so straight after I started the Whisky Exchange, you know, my timing was very good because in '99, many interesting things happened, especially in the world of whiskey. So you guys probably know the company Douglas Lang. So they started in 1999. I was the first customer. So they came to us and said, we are starting to bottle single casks, and we really would like your help. We really need you to help us. So for me, it was fantastic because when I looked at what they bottled, it was, you know, Ardbeg 1972, it was Brora 1972, it was Glengarry 1967, it was lots of amazing whiskies. And we were very lucky because we buy maybe 20, 30, in some cases 50% of the allocation for the UK or the world. And then also in 1999, Duncan Taylor started, and they had Bowmore 1966, and they had Glenlivet 1968, and they had Bona Harvan 1966. So for me, a beautiful time in the industry. So, you know, I was looking at these guys and seeing they're buying casks and they're bottling, which for me was very interesting. And before that, I was buying a lot of bottlings from Signatory. And as I said, my career started mid-1980s. And again, I was one of Signatory's first customers in 1988, 89. And I loved what they did, and I learned a lot from them. They inspired me a lot in terms of how to select single casks, that it's about quality, quality, quality. It was a lot easier then compared to today, but it was all about the liquid. And as well as being in the business, what I fell in love with was flavor. And so then, after we started the business in '99, I did my first independent bottling in 2000. Go up and come out. So this was my first ever bottling. It was a Glen Grant, 1969, 31-year-old, as you can see, from a sherry butt, and absolutely beautiful whiskey. So after that, in the year 2000, I launched my brand, the Single Malts of Scotland, and this was my first bottling. Quite rare, you don't really find it anywhere. Very simple label, a beautiful tomatin, which again, those of us who now know whiskey a lot know that tomatin is a beautiful whiskey, especially from the 60s and the 70s. So this was from a sherry butt, but we bottled it, I think, at 43%. At the time, for me, my target audience in the UK was not really big into cask strength, so we bottled at 43. But today, I regret it. I should have bottled at cask strength. So that was really the start of my journey. And over the last, you could say 20 years, we've created 3 or 4 brands. So we rebranded ourselves a few years ago as Elixir Distillers. And under Elixir Distillers, we have Single Malts of Scotland, which is a range of single cask and small batch bottlings. Elements of Islay, which is a range of 50 cl, medicine bottles with the distillery name as a chemical symbol. It was, when I started that back in 2006, there was nothing like it in the market. You know, everybody used to do either single casks, or distillers used to do standard brand stuff. And everybody was obsessed with age or vintage. And when I launched Elements of Islay, I wanted people to look at the liquid and not at what is the age, what is the vintage, what is the cask type. Because a lot of people like to prejudge. You know, they were like, this is Ardbeg, this is a sherry cask, must be amazing. They used to buy with their eyes and not their palate. And for me, that was wrong. So we launched Elements of Islay without anything on the label. It just said, for example, AR1. AR represented Ardbeg, 1 represented batch 1, and that's the only information we gave. And just said selected by me or my colleagues. And honestly, it was a success from the beginning, because people were very interested that actually, you know, you're right. I buy with my eyes. I think with my eyes. I don't think with my palate. And this is actually very interesting. Today, you have so many no-age whiskies on the market, and people are very upset about it, that, you know, the quality is weak, etc. And, you know, people say to me, why don't you show an age now? I said, look, we did it in 2006, and we sell every bottle that we release. When we release single casks, really within a few days, we sell out. So I think we're doing the right thing, and we did the right thing. And then we also launched in 2009 Portis Keg. So I'm not a distiller, I don't have a distillery, but I had access to some amazing and lovely liquid. And what I believed was, even though the distillery was bottling a similar liquid or the same liquid, the way we blended our whiskey or put our whiskey together, I felt we could do a better job than them. Yeah, this was my belief. And I think we've proved that, because Portis Keg, I know in France as well, has been a great success. So, you know, we look at our casks. When we buy casks, we look at casks, we decide what we need to do. Do we need to recast them? Do we need to age them longer? And then we bottle when we feel it's ready. We don't bottle because it's 10 years old or 12 years old or 15 years old. We bottle when we feel it's ready. So we came up with the concept that we would bottle a lot of our stuff as small batch bottlings rather than, you know, very, very big batches with age statements. So the first product we launched was Portis Keg 100 proof, which is a no-age product. Age-wise, it varies anywhere between 6 and 10. Yeah, because it depends on the quality of liquid and finding the right batch of stock. When we find the right stock, we will bottle it when it's ready. That's it, simple as that. And then we also bottle under Portis Keg small batches at different ages. So we've never had a ongoing, consistent age because we never have the right stock. We have stock, we bottle, whether it's a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old or a 19-year-old or a 25-year-old. We bottle when it's right, that's it. So going on to what we have today. So what we did was when we launched our first Single Malts of Scotland, it was about single cask. Everyone was crazy and obsessed with single cask, single cask, single cask. And even today, people are obsessed with single cask, single cask. I disagree. I think that to find a good single cask is not easy. Yeah? So we only bottle when we find a cask we think it's worthy of bottling. So we may go out to the market and buy a large stock of casks, maybe 200 casks. And when we look at those casks, we bring in maybe 50 samples and try 50 casks at a time. And then we decide what is good for bottling as singles, what needs longer age, more time, what maybe would work better if you marry with different casks, yeah? And some, as I said, need to be recast and left for much, much longer. And we spend a lot of time and energy on this. And for us, this is why our bottlings are really good, is what we believe. So with some of these bottlings, some of these casks which we kept aside, we were always like, what do we do with them? And we came up with two concepts. So we came up, could you go back? Back one? Oh yeah, that's it, okay. So we have our range, Single Malts of Scotland. And in Single Malts of Scotland, we bottle everything as single cask, okay? Then we have a new series which we are launching at the show, which is called Single Malts of Scotland Reserve Casks. So what we did was, as I said, when we buy lots of casks, some of these casks are just not quite right, yeah? So what we do is we try and come up with a small batch bottling. We mix, we marry 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 casks together. And sometimes it takes us a long time to do this because sometimes one cask doesn't work with the other. Then you put 2 together, they work beautifully. Then you try and add the third cask, and that doesn't work. So you have to go and find other casks which work. So it's a really long, complicated process, and you have to really understand each flavor in each whiskey. And over time, that's what makes, I would say, a good blender or a good person who can marry casks together. So with reserve casks, when we have young casks, which are not too old, maybe say under 16 or 17 years of age, we marry 3 or 4 or 5 casks together and we launch them, we release them under this new series called Reserve Casks. When we have older stock, as I say, 16, 17, 18 years and older, we do the same. We marry different casks together from the same distillery, similar ages, usually the same age, sometimes similar ages, and we bottle them under something called marriage. Yeah, Single Malts of Scotland marriage. So really the concept of marriage and the concept of reserve casks is very similar, except that these are young, these are old. This usually is diluted a little bit lower strength to 48%, so still non-chill filtered, for more flavor, but it's a strength which is more approachable. It's halfway between, normal 40-43 and cask strength. So that's that. Then we have, finally, Single Malts of Scotland Director's Special. So, of course, we find also some nice old casks. You could say 25 years and older. These for us are special, you know. As I said, when I started to find 25-year-old, 30-year-old, 35-year-old casks was not very difficult. Today, actually, is very difficult. And for us, when we find these casks, we need to nurture them. You know, we try every cask, we see how long we can keep aging them for, and every 6 months we retry the cask to see, is it ready? Can it last longer? Is it ready? Can it mature longer? And we bottle these special old casks under this range called Director's Special, which we launched 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 3 years ago. So, okay, we start with the first whiskey. So this, we've done the whiskey tasting in the order of basically the most lightest, more elegant in terms of flavor first, and then building up. So the first whiskey we have is Single Malts of Scotland, Reserve Cask. This whiskey is from Orkney, distilled in 2006 and bottled this year. As I said, at 48%. As you can guess, Orkney, there's only 2 distilleries on Orkney. This is from Highland Park, but we were not allowed to use the distillery name, so therefore we bottled it as Orkney. So that's glass number 1. So as I said, you know, this is a marriage of 5 casks. You know, to put 5 casks together, it's quite difficult. When you have young whiskey, it's much easier. When you have older whiskey, it's a little bit more tough. So when we did the marriage, it was really quite complicated. So this, you know, is not an old whiskey. As we said, it's 2006, so we're talking about 12, 13 years of age. We believe it's nice, it's young, it's fresh, it's got that element of smokiness, which you get from Orkney Distillery. Simple, clean, nice. I think the other thing to talk about, why for us this range was very important, and what I think sets us apart from many of the smaller independent bottlers. Look, you have the very good, old, established independent bottlers like Gordon & MacPhail, Cadenhead, Signatory, you could say Douglas Lang, Hunter Lang. They've been around for a good 20, 25, 30 years and longer. The new, smaller independent bottlers, they buy 2-3 casks, they bottle 2-3 casks. They go to the market, they buy 2-3 casks, they bottle 2-3 casks. We, for the last 15 years, have been buying a lot of casks, has been filling casks with new make spirit to lay down, to age for a long time. And we're currently holding about 8,000 casks, which for a company, you know, small like Cask, is a lot. It's quite a lot. But the thing is, we're building for the future. We're controlling our destiny. Yeah? We're controlling the wood we fill into. When we buy casks, if they're semi-mature, you know, 5 years old or 8 years old, we look at them and decide, are they in the right wood for the next 10 years or next 20 years? And then we look at them and we can recast them. Some people have a feeling that recasking is not good. It's people are doing it because you have bad whiskey and you're trying to improve it. Sometimes it's true, but sometimes no. Sometimes it's a case of it's in wood, but it was filled into wood for a reason. It was filled into wood for blending. So they wanted very light, elegant notes. We, for single casks and for small batch bottlings, want more flavor. And actually, when you recask, but for a long period of time into the right wood, it can be amazing. But you need to be very patient, very, very patient. Did you enjoy that? Say simple, young, simple whiskey. And the other thing is, because we invested into casks a long time ago, we can still, we believe, deliver value for money. The price of our whiskies are quite, we believe, realistic in today's market. we're finding that a lot of very young whiskies are very, very expensive. And I don't really understand it. I find it crazy. Katie, do you remember how much is this? So this whiskey is 69 euros. Yeah, which I think is very fairly priced for a 13-year-old Orkney. Okay. So next we go to Single Malts of Scotland, Ben Nevis. Yeah, so this is a single cask. This is 1996, 22 years old, from a refill sherry cask, refill sherry butt, yielding 580 bottles. Cask strength 55.3. As I said, when we are looking at parcels of casks, we're not looking for a big variety of different distilleries. We're looking for quality, quality, quality. So when we find a nice parcel of stock, and the whiskey is superb, but there is a lot of stock, we buy it all. Because we feel if the whiskey is that good, people will want it again and again and again. So we believe we're one of the people that made Ben Nevis sexy today in the last few years. No, I would say until 2-3 years ago, apart from the people who've been in the industry a long time, never really understood Ben Nevis because it's always been available in very short supply. But the people who know Ben Nevis absolutely love Ben Nevis. When we found these casks, we had a mixture of hogsheads, bourbon refill barrel hogsheads. We had some first fill sherry butts. We had some refill sherry butts. And all the liquid is, for me, absolutely superb. We've bottled, I think, a good 40, 50 casks in the last 2 to 3 years for different markets around the world. And as soon as they sell out, they come back and say, can we have another cask, please? Which is a very good sign. It's good sign. So this is what we do. And, you know, over the last 5-6 years, and even for me, this is really good because I sort of fall in love with whiskies which I didn't know very well. So we bought a lovely parcel of casks from Glenbergie, and now I'm in love with Glenbergie. We bought a beautiful parcel of stock from Imperial, which I didn't know very well. I tried it, and some I liked, but I didn't know it very well. But when you have 200 casks, you get to know it very well. So try glass number 2. As I said, this is a refill sherry. What I love about Ben Nevis is, you know, it's a big whiskey. I would say it's one of the last old-style whiskies in Scotland, like Springbank, because really nothing has changed at Ben Nevis. It's been the same distillery manager for, I don't know, 40 years, 35, 40 years. He actually retired on Monday after 40 years or 45 years. And they've changed nothing. I mean, really, the distillery is ugly. They spent no money on it. You know, it's in bad condition, but in one sense, it's good because they changed nothing. Same process, same everything, same suppliers, and I think you can taste how good it is. Beautiful, rich, flavoursome whiskey. Flavour just goes on and on. I get always with Ben Nevis quite nutty, cereally nutty. But I like it because, again, the sherry is in balance. You know, sometimes, of course, we all like sherry cask whiskies. They get too much. I like refill sherry because it's always gentle and in balance, but rich. It's still there. It just lasts and lasts and lasts. Okay. Any questions at the moment? All okay? Good. Okay, so next we're going in a different order. So normally the Director's Special, which, as I said, are old aged whiskies, are single casks or sometimes 2 casks, usually should be at the end. But we're doing this first and then the marriage last because this is a much bigger whiskey in terms of flavor. So whiskey number 3 is a Bona Harvan, 31-year-old, 42.5%. Single cask, 195 bottles, and second fill hogshead. Bona Harvan, we all know, again, beautiful whiskey. I find Bona Harvan ages beautifully. You know, you try some very, very old Bona Harvans, 30-year-old, 40-year-olds, they still can be amazing for an Islay distillery with very low peat. So try it. Banana, correct. I mean, we have a lot of fun in the office. We're a small team. My colleague here, Katie, she looks after export, and including France. My colleague, Ollie, who now looks after this side of the business and really is my chief, you could say, chief taster. So Ollie used to work for me in the shop. And from the shop, he ran Whisky Show for me. And after Whisky Show, he ran it for 3 years. And I was looking for someone to help me with my bottling project. And he came up to me and said, Sukhinder, can I do this? I'm going, Ollie, you have no experience. You're a young guy. Yeah. You know nothing about packaging. I know you have a good palate, but that's not enough. So every week he asked again, have you found anybody for this role? I said, no. Can I go? Can I have a go? Okay, fine. In the end, I decided I have nothing to lose. Let's try it. So I said, okay, fine. And you know what? He's been absolutely fantastic. If you go to the stand, Elixir Distillers stand, ask for Ollie, lovely boy, amazing palate, and he's just developed. So really our tasting team is quite small. There's really 2 or 3 of us, 4 of us. You know, Ollie starts the process, takes it to the team and says, what do you think? And usually they get it right. When it's things with more casks together, then they bring it to me, say, do you like it? Is it fine? And then, you know, sometimes I say, okay, for me, not quite right, not in balance. Let me look at the casks again. So we look at the single casks again, and then we try it in a different formula to see if we can try and improve it. So it's great fun. Having a small team is really good. You know, we don't need to go out to writers and so-called experts to say, what do you think of our whiskey? We do it in-house. We decide simple there and then, yep, this is it. This is what we like. And, you know, the last 2 years, in terms of reviews, for example, through Serge and Whiskey Fan and Ruben, you know, we're consistently very, very good points, always. I met Serge today outside while walking to the venue, and he goes, Sukhinder, bravo. Your whiskeys always are fantastic. I was like, thank you, Serge. Very kind, you know. Beautiful compliment to get. Enjoy? Beautiful, soft, silky, velvety, as you say, banana. So we have a lot of fun that way, you know, coming up with experiments and doing different things. When we put batches of Element Islay together, that's always a lot of fun as well, to do something different. With our love of old spirits, so hopefully next year we're launching a new range of products under Elixir Distillers. And we will also bottle some bourbon, some cognac, some rum, some grain, and some other single malts of Scotland. Just where we're putting different things together for flavor, really. For me, flavor, flavor, flavor. Okay, to the last whiskey. So this is a beautiful example of when single casks are not amazing. So this is a Mortlach, 22 years old, and what happened was I had bought many years ago some lovely old casks of Mortlach. I think it was a mixture of 1990 sherry butts and 1993 refill hogsheads. And some of the sherry butts were beautiful, so we bottled them as singles. But there was 2 sherry butts which were really not very good. Yeah, there were some very nice flavors in these butts, in this whiskies. Very nice flavors, but there was a bit too much sulfur. There was a bit too much, I don't know, probably sulfur is probably my worst fear of a whiskey. But as I said, there were some very nice flavors there. So I said to Ollie, I said, look, let's try marrying with the hogsheads to see if we can create something which is actually more like Mortlach. Because actually Mortlach as a spirit has sulfur. It's a very big, meaty whiskey. And the 93 hogsheads were very light and elegant. And, you couldn't taste anything. It wasn't, for me, a real Mortlach. The sherry butts were more, but they were too over the top. So we experimented and we put together, I think, maybe 5 casks, 2 butts and 3 hogsheads. And this is what we ended up with. But we needed to give it a lot of time to rest and recask. So once we married the liquid, we put it back into wood to rest and slowly marry for another 3-4 months. And when we felt the time was okay, the taste, they had come together nicely, we then bottled it. And I think we did a really good job. And this is where I'm saying not everything should be bottled as a single cask. I completely agree with this. It's impossible that when you buy, a large parcel of, let's say, 100 casks, every single cask is good. It's impossible. Absolutely impossible. So try, see what you think. As I said, for me, this is really more like Mortlach. Some of you must know the old Mortlach 16-year-old Flora and Fauna, which had the beautiful meaty characteristics. For me, this is similar in style. It's rich, it's meaty, it's sherried. And for me, again, very nice. Represents the distillery quite nicely. So this is what we have, guys. Thank you. Any questions?
Can I ask, after this Mortlach, after you married it, and do you put it back into an active cask? Or?
No, we put it back into a cask which is really inactive, which has maybe had whiskey before. Good whiskey, which we've taken out, but we know the cask is clean. Yeah, we will put it back into these so that it has no added flavor. Purely for resting and marrying. Yeah. Sometimes we do put things back into wood where we want to impart a certain flavor. And we're doing it for 2 reasons. One is for the marriage and just to get a little bit of flavor. Yeah. I think, a lot of people use wine casks to enhance the whiskies. I'm not the biggest fan of wine casks, personally. I'm just not. It's not for me. I think long periods of time in wine casks, in the right wine cask, can work. But, people finishing for 3 months and 6 months just to get a little color and all, it doesn't work for me. So last year, we created a Christmas malt on our website. And we're doing the same again this year. So this year, what we're doing is the whiskey is liquid. And we've got, I can't remember the exact composition, but again, mixture of sherry butts, refill sherry butts, and ex-bourbon casks, bourbon barrels. We've married the two. The whiskey is beautiful, but we feel we put it back into some sherry casks we had just to finish it off and actually more to marry them and just integrate all the whiskies together, which I think when you're doing a small batch bottling is very, very important.
Would that be available now?
November. UK only. Sorry. Any other questions? Brilliant. Thank you very much.